Hey guys, we're going to be going over next week's earnings names, looking at a few of these companies, getting a feel for them going into next week, thinking about, the directionals, and we don't have enough data yet for potential setups, but we could go over some of the larger time frames. On We don't have anything on Monday. We have some names listed here, nothing I'm interested in. But on Tuesday, we will have Palo Alto and Home Depot. Those two will be good names. Viking might be a good name in there as well. Um, so let's go and check out. I do want to look at Home Depot really quickly, see where we're at. Home Depot, obviously very strong company, pushing new highs. Let's take a look at the financials. Market cap's high around 400 bill and somewhat peaking off when it comes to annual earnings. You see a lot of growth. Sort of, I could go as far back as the eye could see, and you get more elevated growth, especially into 2022, I would say. And then 2023, we had this like weird drop off where, like, for the first time, we did not have an improvement of revenue year over year. And so that's something that I find a little bit concerning. I do find interesting, though, that Home Depot somehow pulled off 2020 during the COVID pandemic without any real damage to its revenues, which is interesting because that's quite the opposite of a lot of retail stores. Whereas you see like this messed up month. And I'm sorry about I sound clogged up right now because the AC is screwing up my sinuses. So I just want to apologize in advance for that. But nevertheless, higher revenues, and they were able to pull off 2024 with slightly higher than 2022, basically boosting all-time highs. Quarterlies are kind of sideways, so it's really going to come down to like how's like the next quarter going to look. I could imagine if we get something, we're going to get Q2 24. It looks like Q2 24 was the highest performer as of recently, and then Q2 23. So quarter two seemed to be the thing for Home Depot. That seems to be their most profitable quarter. So if we could see quarter two for 25 come out above 43, and yeah, it was around 43 in Q2 and 23. If we could see higher than that, closer to 45, I think that will probably get a positive earnings reaction based on how the overall indexes are performing next week as well. Um, there's nothing really exciting about like retail income statements or their balance sheets because they typically don't own the buildings that they sell things out of, and also they have high expenses um, involved with it. So it becomes more of a revenue game where it's like, how much more revenue could we get? And so I think it's going to be highly tied to the SPY. Obviously, I think the SPY is a little overextended, but if you're a real investor, you know that that's kind of like this fallacy thought of the SPY being overextended because it just always goes up. So like, don't ever like think to short the SPY is my personal um, view on the index, right? Why would I do that? If I'm going to short a company, I'm going to do it with bad companies. I'm not going to short an index full of the best companies. So moving on, um, Home Depot. I'm not going to cover Palo Alto. Wednesday we got Lazy Boy, um, TJ Maxx, Target, Estee Lauder, Zim. They're a shipping container company. They're not a retail company. Um, I was kind of looking into their financials before. Interesting company. But I'm probably not going to touch that. I'm going to try to stick with the retail names this week. That's kind of where I have a nice little niche, especially with short opportunities. And right now, I just feel like the retail space altogether is facing a lot of pushback in regards to the tariff situation. There's a lot of looming risk because many of the products are being imported from overseas, could be increasing costs on products, and just the high operating expenses in a environment where operating expenses are increasing, not decreasing in the United States, right? In terms of labor, rent, utilities, and things of that nature. It's just they're just sort of tougher businesses. And so I did want to look at Bidu because I don't know Bidu, but I did put it on my list. Uh, Bidu, let's see what it is because I have no idea what it is. Technology services. We do have a bunch of technology services names this week, so we'll see what Bidu is. But we also have Workday, Zoom, Intuit. Those are major SaaS platforms, and we'll get into some more discussion on that. Let's see what Bidu does before we get into the financials. They're a Chinese language internet search provider. Company offers. Bidu Maps, Bidu Wallet. So it's maybe a Chinese company. If so, I'm actually going to avoid this just because I just don't know much about it. Yeah, so we're going to avoid that. I typically try to stay away from anything that is outside the United States just because it's out of my frame of understanding, and I feel like there's too much smoky mirrors, right? There's too much cloudiness with this. It's like I'm trying to wrap around a system that I don't understand yet, at least, right? Like this is an international company. I'm gonna stay away from it. So I'm actually gonna take that off of my calendar. But it'll be dependent on the chart too. If there's an A plus opportunity there, it'll be dependent on the chart. Let's check out Lazy Boy. Lazy Boy, surprisingly a good chart. Uh, let's see how far back we could go. This is 5 years. Let's go all time. Like pretty damn good performing chart. Been going up, so that's one variable that I'm gonna want to take with caution. Um, do I think it's gonna be a great company? Probably not. Pretty low market cap, 1.59 billion. Let's see their statements. Sideways, not that great. Low net incomes. So this is a sort of situation. Let's look at the price action. They do have options. I know that already. Um, so you do get like some move intraday. I think like an overextension to the upside will definitely find sellers. Um, we'll have to wait for more data on that one. Let's see, TJX, phenomenal company. This is something that I would not short at all. They're a really good company. If you ever been to a TJ Maxx or a Marshalls, at any time of the day, you go there on a Tuesday at like 10 in the morning, there's going to be a line of moms to the back of the building. You will have to wait 20 minutes just to buy something. And the financials on TJ Maxx are just phenomenal. I think I saw this last quarter. I mean, look at this growth annually. This is huge, right? For a company that has tons and tons of stores, you're not going to have this like, and they sell clothes. It's not like they're selling like some volatile product like technology. They're selling a very stable product like clothing. And so you're not going to get these like massive moves of revenue up, but you're going to get these steady streams of revenue up that are pretty good. I mean, 4% from 2023 to 2024 increase in revenue, and they're holding on to the cash. Net income increased like a solid 4, 5, 5, a solid almost 10% there. That's really good. Quarterly, let's see where they perform best in terms of seasonality. Looks to be Q4s are the best performing quarters for TJX. Makes sense, being that Q4 is just around the holiday season. People are shopping more. They're buying more things. So we're gonna have the Q2 25. So in Q2 we had 13.47, 110, 12.7, 100. So it looks to be like one of their more average quarters. Nevertheless, it's probably going to do well. It's not something that I want to short whatsoever. And so, I think it could even be a good long if we had, for me at least, if we had a really nice pullback intraday. It doesn't look to be a very volatile stock. As you can see, like Friday, it had a 0.25% red day. And that seems to be the theme of like every day this week, right? Where it's like it's up like 0.25% each day, down 0.25%. You're having tighter ranges and not a whole lot of volatility. So if we do get the opportunity, what if situation where you get a really nice pullback at the open, a lot of sellers at the start of the day, I'm going to want to step in. I'm going to take advantage of those call contracts at a very low premium, like 75% off from yesterday's close. That's something that I would be looking for, right? And that's something that I've done on companies like Costco. So like TJX, I think is one of the best clothing companies on the NASDAQ, and Costco as well is like a fantastic consumer brand. And I have done that strategy on Costco a bunch of times successfully. And so TJ Maxx will have popular options. It's not a low volume name by any means. 4.68 average 8 mil average shares traded, and it's a kind of expensive company at $132 a share. So how much money in transactions is that a day? Right, so that's almost $1 billion ticket transactions a day, which is pretty good for, as a retail company, right? And the chart doesn't look like that volume, but you'll get an increase in volume too once we approach the earnings, and especially on the day of the earnings, which will be good for us. So pullbacks, watching 125. I'll even just drop some alerts in here right now. But definitely a long watch on TJX. Moving on. Do I need to look at these? We'll just look at the charts for the rest of these. I don't want to get too washed up in the financials. If it's a poor chart, like here, Estée Lauder, good example. Look at this chart. This stock's got wrecked. It was 346 at the end of 2021. And this company's been around for a while. Estee Lauder, consumer non-durables. I'm pretty sure they do like makeup and skincare, fragrance, hair care products. They own Estee Lauder, MAC. Those are some names that we know. The females, they might know more of these names. I don't know what that is. They have department stores. They sell to retailers. I'm guessing their financials are not that great, being the stock performance. Very sideways financials, very low net incomes. So, high vol, right? You have this enormous range for some reason, right? From which the financials are kind of sideways. So you have this enormous range from 350 down all the way down to 50. It's definitely intraday. It's not too volatile. It actually kind of is. Like 96 all the way down to 90 in one day. That's pretty big, right? So this is definitely a top watch to me. But I'm not seeing a lot of capitulation, which is something that's bothering me. Um, I'd like to see what are the. Does this have the earnings dates in there? I want to see what the past earning dates look like. Historical earnings dates for Estée Lauder. So we have February 5th, 24 and November 1st, 23. Let's see how Estée Lauder performed on those different days. Is that what it was? It was probably the 4th, I would think, not the 5th. Yeah. Okay. So I had a big gap down on the 4th. Let's check. Yeah, you had selling right out the gate, and then you had another leg down, and you had that pre-market weakness. Let's check November 1st, 2023. Oh, what the fuck? Oh, February 5th, 2024. What the fuck is this shit? Why aren't they giving me 2025? Idiots. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT. Dates. Alright, so we haven't had one in a while. Oh, never mind. February 4th, 2025. They did have it. Okay, so it was February 4th, 2025. That was the day. And then we also had May 1st, 2025. So let's move forward to that one. Big spike that got rejected heavily. Okay, so that's 2 out of 2 with the weekdays. Selling into the open, but not bad compared to the previous day's close. Let's go even further back. Let's check August 19th, 2024. Last available bar. I have premium access on TradingView, and this is what they do to me. So this is the type of setup that I like. This is a great setup. And so this is the quarter that is upcoming, but from last year. Which quarter is that? Q3. This is what I like. I like to see pre-market weakness, initial reaction lower from 95 down to 85, and then this huge overextension from 85 into 97, 98 area. And you don't want to be too picky about your entrance, but you do want to be careful because these contracts are going to move. I could already see that there's 100% IV right now. I'd like to see how that changes the day of. I don't think 100% is that high or something to be worried about. Estée Lauder will be on a Wednesday, so you're still going to have, a full, 3 days basically before Friday. And 100 is just not, like, killer. you shouldn't be trading contracts that are like over. I think like over 120 it starts getting a little weird, and then over 150 it's like and then like if you're close to 200 it's just like no, anything above there it could go as high as like 400,000. Like you just want nothing to do with those contracts. They're not even gonna move. They're just premium washing. So you want to be selling options in that sort of situation. And this is what I love. I like to see weakness. I like to see a big pullback above. And you kind of have the psychological price point of 98 and also 100 up above. But I mean, this thing moved from 83 to 98 after having a poor initial reaction. And then it opened up and immediately started going red. But it looks like, let's go back to that. Oh, I forgot it. I can only see it on a 15-minute time frame. That's fine. But that's a great setup that we're looking to fade. So you like to keep those things in mind. It's not that, that's necessarily going to happen. It might not happen, right? There's a good chance it won't happen. But, by looking at the behavior of that particular stock, we already looked at like 4 quarters right there, and they didn't perform well. I mean, on earnings, like that's when you're gonna get a lot of these big moves on the stock, um, and they're not reacting well to them, and you have this enormous range. So if I could get a pop, we're sitting at 90 here. If we could trend upwards, and we get a pop into 100 or something like that, it would probably be interesting to me for a short. But we'll need new data. Right, we have many trading days ahead. This chart is going to start to look a bit different. But interesting take on Estée Lauder, definitely a top watch. Gonna skip those so we can push ahead. Walmart. Obviously, fantastic performing stock, continues to hit all-time highs. So I'm probably not going to look for a short. Probably. I always say probably because you never know. There might be a really, really good short setup regardless. But Walmart is a steadily growing stock. We all know this. Very good financials. Not going to be a ton of surprises with this one. That's for sure. So we'll see how Walmart plays out. Walmart, if we got a spike lower, that's something I would be interested in, similar to TJ Maxx. But I'd like to see when the earnings come out, what they look like, what the reaction is from the public, how does the stock react. All those things are going to come into my decision-making process. And let's get into some of these SaaS programs on Thursday. We have Zoom, Workday, Intuit, ROST is a good company I'm going to be wanting to look at as well. ROST is very similar to TJ Maxx. They're another clothing retail chain, and they perform very good. Maybe not as good of a chart as TJ Maxx, but you know what to expect here, right? Bigger earnings, doing better. A really deep dip would be interesting to me. It's on a different day than TJ Maxx, so what I want to see first with Ross is how does TJ Maxx react to their earnings? Because I know that there are going to be a lot of similarities with Ross because it's such a similar store, right? It's value chain clothing. So I'm going to want to see how is that reaction. That'll affect my thinking when we get new data and we see how Ross earnings come out and how it reacts to that. Same thing with TJ Maxx, you get that seasonality with the Q4s. So let's look at some of these SaaS companies. Zoom, I already know is not a good company. We also have BJ, so let me just put this in my calendar quick. Into Workday ROST. Okay, So Zoom, let's take a look at this one first. This one should be a good short. Um, Terrible chart, awful chart. Looks like hell, right? And I think it's so funny, right, that we're looking at these other companies and they have fantastic charts. They're hitting all-time highs. They never really come down much. And then you look at a company like Zoom and you're like, wow, this shows investors how important timing is in markets. And that markets are really a lot about capital flows rather than individual companies sometimes when it comes to stock performance, right? And so Zoom was one of those companies that came out right at the midst of COVID and they took a huge run, right? Literally going public during COVID, having a huge run to the upside with all these companies going to remote work. There's all this hype around Zoom is going to be, take over the remote work sphere. They're going to provide all the tools necessary for corporations to transition. And they found that, at least in my opinion, Zoom really doesn't have that much value there. All they have is this video meet platform for people to meet on video, share their screen. Maybe there's some cool, unique features in there, but they're competing with a lot of major corporations that are much bigger than them that already had these tools in place, like Microsoft Teams, like Google Meet, for example. And so I feel that I would put my trust in Google or Microsoft before I trust some startup Zoom that came out in 2020, went from $70 to $600, and then got absolutely wrecked, right? And so you have a lot of bag holders with this one. I want to be very clear. A lot of bag holders, people who have this stock at much higher prices. And so I can make an assumption that when price moves too high, you're going to find a lot of sellers. And without looking into 2021, if we just look, let's say, the past year, you really don't have good performance. And if we looked at like the time before that, like past 2 years, it's really gone sideways. So you see the sellers really stepping up when they start making these moves up, regardless of what the financials are. And we'll look at that in a second. I do want to back up a little bit here on the chart, see what we're working with. I want to see some of the reactions to prior earnings. Surprisingly, the financials are not terrible. Um, they still are going up since COVID. But my perspective on SaaS companies, I try now to integrate my long term view too much into my intraday trading because I have such shorter time frames. But it's always important to keep that as a variable. And I feel a company like this with competition, it's going to drive the cost of their services to zero. I think a lot of these SaaS companies in general that are providing these cloud services, the the prices are going to come down substantially because the service exists on a cloud. It's not people coming to your home. There's no products involved. There's no substance, right? Once you kind of perfect the software program itself, sure, you're going to introduce tweaks. Sure, AI is going to get better and you're going to improve the product through investment means. But at the end of the day, it's still just a video communication platform. There's so many restrictions in the short to medium term. And so I just don't see these companies doing well over the next 5 to 10 years. I just can't imagine it. And with the increase in technology and AI, I just see the cost from a user end are going to go down a lot. And I think the stock performance is pretty damn weak if I'm just looking at the summer so far since May. And so I like this chart, right? We have pretty good range. Um, it's not that far, surprisingly, for a stock I would think would be more volatile, given its chart. It seems to be floating in a $5 range, comes up, gets rejected. But what it's doing is it's making lower lows and it's making higher highs. So if next week we get a pop into 75 region or 74.5, and obviously we have to wait for new data, I keep saying this, but if we got like an overextension pop where we have a large range bound move to the upside, I'm going to look for a short opportunity there, and I think the options will be good as well. The options are probably not really traded that much. I could already see that the IV is lower, which is good. It was lower than Estee Lauder there, sitting at 73. That's good. The lower the IV, the better. The more value that we're going to get for our contracts, the more range in price that we're going to get on those put contracts as well. Given it's a $70 stock, we get cheaper contracts right at the money. That's good for me as well. I look for them. And so this, I'm looking for a good short opportunity on Zoom for sure, especially with these fundamentals starting to flatten out and everything I've said about my perspective on the company. Right. All right. Let's just do a quick check on BJ. I want to see how they perform relative to Costco. All right, very good performance. I'm gonna include that in our Costco conversation before, and not do a whole thing into BJ's. If we did get a sizable dip into 90 or something like that, and the contracts were a huge premium loss, like I'm talking going from $500 to $30, $40 a contract very quickly overnight at the open, that would be something that would gauge my interest on the call side. And lastly, let's just look at INTU quick, and then we will wrap it up. I'm not going to do all this chart work on all these names and, put out my levels, because obviously, we have to wait. Some of these names are on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so I have to wait for Monday's data in order to have a very precise chart work and lay out my levels, lay out my alerts, and get a good feeling for the charts. INTU, another great company, seems to perform well. They have a monopoly with a lot of different pay-for-service software programs, including TurboTax. If anybody's used TurboTax, it seems like everybody feels like they need to use TurboTax. It's the most popular way for people to file their taxes every year, and there's not really much other competitors in the space that have brand moat and reputability. And so I use TurboTax. Most Americans use TurboTax, and they started integrating fees in after COVID, and that's like a huge revenue stream for them. Obviously, a highly performing stock. So going to be looking for dip opportunities based on how the chart is looking. Extremely good financial performance, and being that they're a cloud service, they get to keep a lot of their net income, which is good. But huge increases year over year. I'm talking over 20% from 2023 to 2024. Beautiful 14 to 16 billion. Quarterly, you could see Q3 2025, Q3 2024. This might be their fiscal year. They have other products as well, but I'm going to assume that the Q3s are their fiscal year. So that's actually going to be Q1 on a regular calendar year, January to April, when people are buying their TurboTax service. That is what's reflecting on Q3 25. Fiscal year could be, that's the company's calendar. Remember, it's not the U.S. calendar. They also have Credit Karma. I think that's another huge monopoly. Credit Karma is the go-to for Americans when checking your credit. Um, and there's really not much other competitors out there when it comes to Credit Karma. ProTax, I know, is used by a lot of businesses, and QuickBooks. QuickBooks is used by a ton of small businesses to do financial management, payment processing solutions, and things of that nature. So, phenomenal company. Do not want to short it, right? And that's why it's important for you, if you're an earnings trader, to be looking at the companies that you're possibly going to be trading. Is there going to be a setup on this? Probably not, right? We have a ton of earnings names. I'm going to be looking at most of these, right? I'm probably going to be doing three of them tops. Probably going to be trading three to four of them tops this entire week, and there's a dozen of them, right? Um, so I have to look at them and understand them. I'm not going to understand every single company, right? I'm trading earnings every single week. It's going to take some time for me to, get into the nitty gritty with every single company, right? But this looks good. I would look for dip opportunities. You kind of have this weird gap up here, so 668, 675 would be areas of interest for me. And yeah, that's INTU. So I hope you guys got a little bit of value about this. Sorry about my stuffy sinuses. I know I sound silly right now. But yeah, wait for new data next week, and I'll keep you guys updated on my X. Peace.